Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar today. Going to be talking about the world of PLM and has this year created a sort of catalyst for change in digital transformation. So there's not been really a single phenomenon in recent years that's had such a wide impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has, not just on a few aspects, but on the sort of entire product life cycle. It's caused rapid change in business and continues to impact the way products are planned, designed, made, delivered, used of, and disposed of at the end of their life cycle. And I hope by the end of the webinar, I'll have a bit of a better picture of what the PLM market looks like going forward. And we're putting out some polls as well, a couple of points throughout the webinar. And as always, your input on that is much appreciated. We'll also be having a Q&A session as well. If there's any additional things you'd like to ask myself or Fino. So first, I'd like to introduce Michael Finocchiaro. I've been co-hosting webinars for the past few weeks. Fino's well experienced and full of insight and knowledge into PLM. So I'll give it to you, Fino.
Yeah, thanks, Simon, and thanks for all the folks joining us once again. Yeah, so we spoke about 3 sessions so far just on what is PLM in the cloud, and today the idea was for me to kind of turn around and ask questions to Simon and Haig&Co about what is the impact of cloud and COVID on the job market. So we're hoping that you guys will find the content super interesting and that you'll come back for more of these webcasts.
Fantastic, thank you. So the first bit we're just going to touch on is going to go on to a little bit of data, and in fact, the first thing we're going to do is throw up a poll for you guys actually. So if you want to have a look at the first poll, which is going to be, has COVID had a negative impact on your professional life? So yes, your job search has been stalled, career development and progression has been halted, or no, you're operating as normal.
Yeah, I'm pretty much expecting a lot more on the first 2 than the last one, but so far so good. The first one's catching up.
Bit more of a mix than I thought, maybe.
Yeah, it's more people writing on a normal basis than I had figured.
It's good. It's good to see.
Does that change anything you want to say later?
it could well have done, yeah. So and I'll let you guys see the results for that. So yeah, quite a mix. I didn't expect so many people of jobs to not have changed. And obviously expect it's quite a high percentage of people's jobs that have been stalled. So the global based PLM market is expected to grow by $2.2 billion by 2023, with work carried out in North America taking up around 42% of the market. And it's predicted to be dominated by 4 or 5 of the sort of big players in the market. And whether or not this will be the case, companies like Siemens have agreed sales deals with SAP recently, or some of the smaller vendors will come through with new innovations that may sort of shake up the market a little bit. In the sort of terms of effect of COVID on the PLM landscape, so PLM implementations are often run on a project basis. So what I mean by this is you'll have a team come on site, implement a PLM system, train the client team up, and then move on to the next project. And this, as many of you know, can take last number of years, depending on the size of the business and what the client wants to achieve. So vendors do generally leave a small team of their own employees with the client to ensure the system is well maintained, and the client also gets the maximum out of the software. So due to this way of working and also lockdowns and uncertainty around manufacturing and the engineering market back in March this year, many projects are put on hold halfway through and others were sort of non-starters. So I'd say this has probably had a larger effect on businesses involved in aerospace, oil and gas, and probably automotive to some extent, but it's certainly felt across much of the PLM industry. What would your thoughts be on this, Fino?
Yeah, I've seen about the same thing, particularly aerospace and automotive being hit really hard. Some of the bigger projects just kind of scaled down or slowed down, maybe a little picking up now, but with the second waves that are starting to hit, that it's making it difficult. So I think that customers are being forced to look at how do you do these projects without face-to-face meetings and face-to-face interaction, because not everybody was tooled up for doing a lot more remote work, and so I think that we're still sort of in a transitionary period with respect to that.
Okay. Yeah, it's very true, very true. In my experience of speaking to professionals in the tech industry, a lot of staff were sort of immediately let go of. Those contract staff, those permanently employed were put on furlough, and they only had a sort of small team of real core staff that were stayed on to maintain systems and some of the work that couldn't be halted, so to speak. So this has left a huge pool of talented PLM professionals looking for work with very little to go at. So I know some people in my network had sort of moved to the UK for new projects only a few weeks before going into lockdown, and unfortunately the roles are put on hold, which of course is a difficult position to be put in when you've sort of up and moved your life into the country. However, on a more sort of positive note, the market's definitely taken an upturn in the last 2 months, and I'm beginning to see a bit more activity, which is really promising across all levels of the PLM structure. So things sort of seem to be going in the right direction now. And although the market has picked up, certainly not enough roles at the moment for the amount of talent that's out there. So I'm seeing more people wanting to take on permanent roles for the security, whereas possibly 6-12 months ago, some people would prefer to work contract, potentially due to the high wages, mainly the sort of flexibility that came with it, although there was always that underlying risk of not having any work. And one interesting area is going to be what happens with the contract market and IR35. And how this is going to affect the contract market, and whether or not more professionals decide to go for permanent roles. I mean, what's your experience been around sort of projects and working abroad and contracts in Fino?
I think it's that I think it's there's a tendency for people to want permanent jobs now because the companies that have been impacted have kind of focused on their own employees and gotten rid of everything that was kind of extraneous. In other words, subcontractors. You might want to explain what IR35 is because I'm not sure everybody knows what that is. But my understanding is it's some working restrictions in England in terms of residency and working there. I can say that in France I'm having that problem too because the French tax authority only considers where I physically am when I'm doing work. And so since I can't travel anymore, I can't travel to the US. I have to use my European company even for my American clients. So that's been a bit of an accounting change and an adjustment to make. I think that, like I said before, there's this whole period of adjustment where we have to learn how to work remotely. And I think we have to reevaluate how we actually work with our employer or our employees based on the fact that we can't necessarily be in the same room, and that changes fundamentally some of the relationships. I think we'll talk about that a little bit later, right? But the way that we've been doing outsourcing or near sourcing before, I think we're going to have to relook at that some more because of the pandemic.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, from a business, I mean, we can go through IR35 a little bit later as well towards the end. But from a business and productivity point of view, it's not an all negative. A lot of businesses have already moved their platforms onto the cloud and are able to sort of quickly enable their teams to work effectively from home. So just Dassault and Siemens and other end users. So projects were still able to continue, and teams could still sort of collaborate and brainstorm ideas. And then from a recruitment side of things, the industry as a whole has felt a hit, and there was a number of roles back in March which had to be put on hold, unfortunately. And uncertainty in the market, it was a bit of an uphill battle to sort of speak to new clients because they were unsure of what's going on, and we're still sort of letting go of staff April, May time, and also up to now as well. So to put a positive spin on it, as a business, we didn't sort of furlough anyone. We kept on working throughout, mapping the PLM market in Europe, in the US and Canada, which in turn has helped us create some work over in the US in the past couple of months, which has been a really positive move for us.
Well, what about job demand, Simon, in the PLM market?
So job demand, PLM solutions obviously have become an integral part of many industries where design is a big factor. It's helped them bring in multiple streams into one place, which the internal teams can access and collaborate. So these systems can be very complicated, have lots of different tools that you can use without knowing the software really extensively, you may not get the most out of it, which is where roles like solution architects come into play. Really important during the implementation phase. So they generally meet with the client gather requirements, implement the software, and then ensure the client team is trained in how best to utilize the software to achieve the goals of the client. And this kind of talent, I believe, is really sought after in the PLM space as companies endeavor to make the most of the software and get a return on their investment. At the moment, there's certainly a surplus of this talent in the market. And when companies need to call on that, there's no doubt it's going to be very competitive for those jobs. And sort of larger manufacturing businesses, sort of automotive and aerospace, for example, which have possibly already gone through a PLM implementation process, the need for solution architecture, for example, may be less. Although they will still need to have some within their teams, and the higher focus will be on designers, engineers, and people who actually use the system on a day-to-day basis, and not just have a smaller team of professionals on site to fix bugs and find solutions. Seems to be a lot more roles out there for these skill sets at the moment in terms of designing and engineers, and I predict they might be the first likely area that are going to be in demand when work does resume in the next few months, hopefully. And touching on startups as well, they're going to need a wide range of roles to begin with, covering all aspects of the sort of PLM space. And I think with an abundance of experienced professionals at the moment looking for work, they've really got a good selection of professionals out there, so they can really tap into some great talent. So again, it's going to be competitive for people when if these companies do start to hire in the next few months. On top of all that, you've got the cloud market in PLM, which has meant that the skills of PLM professionals also need to change, include skills such as software development, coding, Java, JavaScript, such as. What would you say about the sort of key growth areas in the job demand, Vino?
I agree that the skill set is fundamentally changing because of the technology is finally starting to evolve, and there is cloud adoption, which also changes us from a mode of customization to more configuration. I think that I agree that in the large manufacturing, there's still going to be some migration work as companies are trying to adopt newer versions of the Team Center or 3D Experience or Windchill or Innovator or anything like that. And there'll still be need for CATIA skills, which can be done remotely, which is good. But I think that it's a good time to be using Udemy or Codera to start looking at other skills around some of the things that you mentioned, like Node.js or JavaScript, because I think that with the cloud, the thing we're going to be writing more is going to be widgets and user interfaces to the data rather than changing the data itself. Uh, I think with respect to startups, indeed, I would say that there's a lot of potential also for electric cars, autonomous vehicles. There's still a lot of investment going there because what we haven't even mentioned during this series of webcasts is climate change, right? So besides COVID and besides
Definitely.
cloud, with climate change, we need to be looking at ways of getting off of our carbon addiction. And if you look at the fact that Tesla just signed to do a huge factory in outside of Berlin, that's going to be for Eastern Germany. That's going to be a great place for more jobs, and also research around battery development will continue. So I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel, that despite the doom and gloom that we get on the news every day.
Of course, of course. No, thank you, Fino. Just going to quickly go into talking about how companies can enhance their recruitment process, possibly. So, for me, I think a huge area that companies do use, but don't potentially tap into as much, is the graduate market. So, I know of another place in France called the Academy de PLM, which works with younger professionals starting out in the PLM market to get them upskilled and on the job ladder. And I feel that the younger generation of PLM professionals are often very forward thinking. It could potentially be great for SMEs and startups to benefit from a talented pool, which are possibly going to be a little bit cheaper, but also going to be very skilled. What do you think about the up and coming talent market in the PLM space, Vino?
Well, like I said, I think that it's a good time now when we're between jobs to be looking at new skills that we were talking about earlier. I think that indeed for people that are kind of the middle of their career, it's a tough time because there aren't younger kids that can live on a lot less than we can. So there is quite a lot of competition there. So looking at some of the stuff we'll talk about later, some of the new technology, that's another way to try to stay current. And again, there's a ton of free training on iTunes U, Codera, on Udemy, on LinkedIn Learning. There's also a lot of stuff there. So I would encourage people to use some of their time about that. Also, I think there's an opportunity for becoming a trainer. I think that the training is, you mentioned it earlier, how important it is during a project to bring users up to speed. I'll mention again, like I did last time about Share PLM, friends of mine that have that company that do an excellent job at creating onboarding training and so forth. So I think that there might be some room there for people that can uh, over the net, because that's traditionally the PLM training has been in classroom training, but we need remote training now because we're not going to be in classrooms anymore. So I think that there might be some opportunity
Definitely.
there in terms of job growth.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you, Fido. I think you've put some good points there. Definitely, remote training is going to be something that's going to be more prominent in the next few years, and people are going to be demanding more, I guess. So we talk about a few companies within PLM are going to drive an innovation. Fido's going to talk to you about this.
So yeah, it would be just in terms of where you want to look for the people that are the furthest ahead of the curve in terms of innovation, which hopefully will drive more jobs. The big the $3 billion vendors, of course, are we've talked about them on the other webcast. Are Dassault Systems with 3D Experience, PTC with Windchill and ThingWorx, and of course Siemens with Teamcenter. Each of them has done a good job of maintaining their installed base, but also trying to come out with cloud-based solutions or SaaS solutions, which means that again the skill set is moving more towards configuration and understanding how to create user interfaces so that users can get to the data rather than modifying the data itself. Um, and I'd say that's the same for the three of them. I think that with that, so that and Teamson, I think you need a little more hard skills. There's still a little bit of real coding, like with C++, that may be required. Whereas I think with Windchill, it's particularly thanks to a lot of the things they've added with ThingWorx, it's a little bit less code intensive. Um, with some of the other platforms, Aras is known to be really easy to configure, and I know that Minerva PLM continues to do a lot of communication and do a lot of good work. Um, Autodesk is, at least over here in Europe, is not that big. Although in terms of manufacturing and manufacturing CAD, they're pretty extraordinary. And then you've got the smaller ones we've already talked about, like Eurostep, ShareSpace, Upchain, Propel. Uh, and then the Ganister, which is interesting because it's a graph-based database for PLM, which is cool. And I don't want to miss OpenBOM from Oleg. So I think that all these companies are driving innovation in terms of the job market. Again, cloud adoption means training people to use the software in new ways. So there's opportunities there. It's also creating interfaces so that the users can get to the data and understand it without having to be, having a mechanical engineering degree, which has been a challenge in the past. And I think all the vendors have done a good job there. Now it's up to those of us out in the workforce to train the employees using the software so that they're as efficient as possible. Um, so anyway, I think that's how I'd look at it. I think the other aspect that's not on the slide is the industry. We talked about the slowdowns in aerospace, oil and gas, and automotive. But again, I think there's some growth in the electric car and autonomous vehicle stuff. That drones are still a source of investment,
Mm.
and I think that consumer electronics, consumer packaged goods, pharma, biotech, of course, these are areas that are, of course, because of COVID, there's going to be a lot of investment there. So I think that if I was starting out, I would probably lean towards some of those newer industries where the growth is going to be a bit more explosive than the industries that are going to be slowing down, where because the ones like aerospace and automotive, they're going to be looking for probably more skilled people or really, really low skills, but they give them exactly textbook what to do from step one to step two. Or they need super skilled people that know the data models really, because they're going to be doing all this migration work. Whereas newer, smaller companies that are starting with a brand new PLM that never done it before, as well as startups, these are places where it's going to be really exciting and where you could bring in really innovative solutions that are that where the you won't have to do as much data modeling, but you'll be doing more user interface stuff. So I think I don't know it's going to be an interesting couple of years as things start to accelerate in terms of innovation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Cheers for that. Really good insight there. So, I mean, one of the big questions when I'm speaking to professionals at the moment is when a thing is going to resume, when a project's going to resume. So, with the PLM market obviously been quiet for many months, especially in the UK, there's certainly been some uncertainty around things will pick up. However, I mean, looking at the jobs that are now being advertised, it's looking like there's now some more activity in the market. Some industries are beginning to return to work. I think the commercial airline side of things is still going to remain relatively quiet for a period of time, as quarantine restrictions are sort of harbouring travel to many destinations around the EU and obviously globally as well. Speaking to some of our clients that we're working closely with, they're hoping to resume some sort of project work around towards the end of the year, hopefully, and certainly by beginning of 2021. But the extent of that is still sort of yet to be revealed, I guess. I mean, there's also some murmurs that a couple of car manufacturers in the UK maybe beginning to bring back their PLM teams. Whether this is just to continue and maintain the systems that they've already got on the site, or whether or not they're going to sort of begin to develop new products and integrate new solutions. Again, we're yet to be seen, and we'll probably find that out over the next couple of months. And obviously, we know the contract workforce has been heavily affected. Back in March, there's some large PLM companies that we've spoken to over the past few weeks that fear they may have cut too thin back at the beginning of the year to cut costs, and now things are starting to move in the right direction. Haven't necessarily got the talented workforce there to achieve what they need to do. And are they then going to have enough resources to get that talent in? There's some areas of their business still being furloughed, as you know, the recruitment and sourcing sides of the business. I mean, what do you think about project work? When do you think things are going to start to pick up? And do you think cloud's going to have a big impact on this?
Well, I think that for the bigger companies that are brownfield, current deployments, I don't. I think that they'll probably be the cloud initiatives will come, but they won't come until late next year probably because they're going to be so busy just keeping afloat with less personnel and the work change. I think that, however, newer projects that get launched, startups, greenfield industries that are not very mature in PLM, I think those all will have a massive cloud impact as we were talking about the last few times. Um, I think that there is a caution to be made, though, which goes to your point about, did we furlough too much and we cut too close to the bone and now we can't start again? The cloud is sort of the same thing. If you get rid of all your IT people and anyone that knows PLM and you just are counting on the cloud partner, and then suddenly you've got an issue with the cloud for whatever reason, an acquisition or what have you, then it's going to take you a very long time, maybe a couple of years to rebuild a team and rebuild an infrastructure. So I'd say that a balanced hybrid approach at this point would be good. And I think, again, the cloud will have an impact, but it'll be more, I think, on the emerging industries than in the traditional ones, at least for the next 6 to 9 months.
No, fantastic, thank you. So we're just going to go over a couple of popular regions, sort of globally and more around Europe, which are popular within PLM space. So obviously the discussion around which areas of the PLM market are going to be growing is certainly more complicated now due to the pandemic. So Scandinavian area, I think may grow somewhat due to the nature they dealt with the pandemic, and also got some really interesting tech coming out of that region. If you do a little bit of research into there, particularly into sort of clothing, workwear, boots, walking clothes, and things like that. Really good companies out there. And in France, a huge amount of aerospace manufacturing. I think this is still going to be pretty quiet over in France, mainly due to people potentially not returning to work on site, and also the aerospace market being pretty quiet still. Then we've got Spain, Italy, parts of Eastern Europe. I think may still struggle in the PLM space, just because of the restrictions in place still, and people not being able to return to work again, and generally how they dealt with the pandemic in total. I mean, are people going to from Scandinavia or the US or other parts of the globe going to want to go and work there in the future, where this could potentially happen again. And then obviously North America, as mentioned at the beginning, is going to be taking a huge market share. It's growing, expected to be a sort of market dominator over the next few years. And I know from my own experience that the US market's still pretty active, and the last 2-3 months has been great to see. And hopefully that sort of flows over into the UK and Europe over the next few months, and helps to give us a bit of a kick on as well. What would you say about the sort of global areas in the PLM market, Fino?
Well, I'd say there's certainly a lot of challenges in South America too because of COVID. Eastern Europe also is complicated, and Asia as well is. I mean, all these regions are going to be refocusing on themselves, right? We don't have we're not doing international travel anymore, which is really an opportunity for companies to reevaluate the kind of talent they're looking for, and if you don't have the skills locally, you can use people remotely through different platforms like freelance.com and things like that. I mean, it might be a real opportunity rather than doing outsourcing to do near sourcing and things like that. Not necessarily, an English company could easily outsource some of the work to Holland or to Belgium or to France, right? You mentioned France. It depends on where you are in the country. Here in Paris, we're under a bit of a lockdown, and Marseille as well. Toulouse is, the Airbus project's still going on, but they're certainly bleeding a lot of personnel, and things are slowing because, well, they canceled the 380, the 350 slowing down. So yeah, we've got it's quite challenging. That's why I was pushing for talking about the newer industries, and some of the positive things like this big Tesla factory in Germany. Hopefully, we'll see more things like that over here too.
Yeah, fantastic. That'd be really interesting. Actually, I might have to have a little look into Tesla in Germany. So to have a little look towards the sort of future and give you guys a little bit of a wrap up, I guess. So the last few years in the PLM market, seen some new releases of Dassault's 3D Experience, Siemens Teamcenter, BTC's Windchill and ThingWorks, and Autodesk's Fusion Lifecycle platform, coming from some of the larger vendors in the market. So these are aimed to bridge the gap between sort of on-prem and cloud solutions, which is a hugely growing market, obviously. And this has allowed to introduce new updates, tools, and customizations quicker to meet client needs and expectations. So, and another area I believe is going to grow quite quickly over the next few years is augmented reality. So that's it's due to grow from 849 million to 3.6 billion over the next 6 years. Which is a huge growth of around 15%, I think it was, if I remember looking at the stats on year. 3D printing, again, huge area that I think is going to be periods of growth going through there with companies like Markforged, which I know have made quite a big stamp on the market. COVID certainly changed the recruitment landscape, and from a geographical point of view, more people can be working from home. People can be working from anywhere if they could go on holiday, and more people are going to probably be demanding that as well when they're looking for new jobs, and employers are going to have to change the way that their workforces are working, and also salaries. Are they going to become more equitable across the PLM market due to sort of the workforce working remotely? Is it going to be more competitive in terms of salaries and what people are after? And also, a while back earlier on in the year, I was listening to a talk from SimData's president and CEO, Peter Billio. So he believes that the PLM solutions of today won't cut it tomorrow. It's essential for the PLM community to continue rethink the project life cycle and how it can be further enabled. And I think he's right. I mean, what customers want changes all the time. PLM vendors are going to need to match this through innovation and be able to adapt quickly and make changes. They've actually got a conference in November from the 17th to the 19th, I believe. So if you want to have a little look and check that out, have a look at SimData's website. Their logo is just on the page here for you. And there's also a new. Oh, okay, it's been postponed to 2021. I've just been told, someone popped in the chat, so thank you for that. Appreciate it. And there's also a new PLM platform called Momentum PLM. So they're looking to bring the sort of PLM community together through up-to-date news, market insights, and the latest jobs from around the world in sort of one space. So I believe it's momentum-plm.com if you guys want to have a little look at that at any point at all. What do you think about the future of the PLM, Fino?
Well, I think that yeah, the Sim Data conference is going to be great. I wanted to thank Eurostep for sponsoring that, and I think that's going to be really interesting stuff. If I go over what you were saying in terms of some of the places where there'll be some the where the future is going to change, we actually had a presentation planned for this. We'll do in a couple of weeks, but I would say that one area you mentioned is AR, so augmented reality, virtual reality. Uh, PTC, I think, is ahead of the curve there because they already had the Vuforia integration with ThingWorks so that you could do remote maintenance without actually having to be next to the maintenance worker. In other words, if you were trying to repair something, the technician could be looking through the glasses that the actual worker on the factory floor is who's in front of the machine and say, okay, well, no, it's 3 bolts over, turn that 3 times, or give instructions directly. I think we're going to see more and more applications of that, so that again to foster this environment where we're working remotely. Another area you mentioned 3D printing. I would go further and say generative design. That's a place where you can invest, and I think that there'll be a ton of growth in generative design and additive manufacturing because of this the time and money savings that we can get from that. That sort of ties into systems engineering, which is another huge field, which all three, in fact, all the PLM vendors, but particularly the Siemens, PTC, and Dassault have invested a lot of money in model-based systems engineering for creating digital twins. That's going to be a huge area going forward. I'd also mention artificial intelligence, which we put on this slide, because the latest releases of several of the vendors, particularly Teamcenter, is using artificial intelligence to guide the user experience so they can
Hmm.
get to the functionality. I think the AI is also super important when it comes to generative design, as you determine, have the AI figure out what the optimal design is. So the people that are coming out of school that are learning AI, I think they're going to be one of the big talent pools for the next generation of PLM as we go forward. Did I miss anything on the slide? No, systems
No, no.
engineering. No, I think we got it.
I think you covered it. So thank you, Fino. Thank you everyone for tuning in. So we've just got a poll to throw out before we jump into Q&A. It's just around what we could potentially offer the sort of PLM community, I guess, going forward in terms of helping you. So would you be interested in a separate webinar focusing on formatting CVs, interview prep?
Oh, there it is. Okay. So about half and half so far. Oh, we need to clarify the Sim Data conference with Eurostep is not being postponed, as Håkan said in the chat. So definitely there is this conference uh, in and the one in November from the 17th to the 19th is definitely going forward. So we hope
Okay,
I'll be there thanks to Eurostep. So I hope other folks will be there as well.
fantastic. So has they
I'm at
got any?
70%, so it looks like there is a bit of a consensus
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
it. So that's really good
So
news.
we'll have a look at getting something out to you guys over the next few months. So if there's any questions, any Q&A you'd like to ask us, please pop them in the
Well,
Q&A function.
go to the next slide because I get to advertise my book. There. So my book is available as of today on. Oh no, the other slide.
Ooh,
No, go the other way. Yeah, there it is
Yeah.
on the upper side. So yeah, the demystifying SaaS PLM, PLM and cloud in the time of COVID is on available on Amazon. So I hope you guys will pick up a copy, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Also, all the podcasts, all the webinars, and the other side material, the interviews I've been doing are both the podcast on the Apple Store as well as on YouTube. In fact, just after this, I'm going to be talking to Dassault, so there'll be a new one from Vincent Ferbo of Dassault System. So please come and check out the different content. So, did we get some questions?
Let's have a little look. Um, Nothing as of yet. Let's give it
Oh,
a
you got to have
minute.
seed questions, dude. Well, I mean, is anybody that's still on the call? Did you guys find that this was interesting, and was it insightful, or is it telling you what you already knew? It'd be nice to get a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, definitely.
'Cause I think there's still 13 of you on the phone, so. Okay, well, that's a bit silent. Next time you just definitely have to have seed questions. Oh, there's one Q&A. Hold on. There's something in the Q&A here. Are companies paying the market-based salaries that PLM talent deserves, or are they offering low-paying salaries? So that's a question for you, Simon, or for Damien.
I think across the board, generally from speaking to people in the industry, most salaries have sort of hit the mark of what people are expecting. I have found sometimes some of the large vendors possibly have slightly lower salaries, not by much, but some of the smaller companies that have just sort of launched and obviously want to attract the best talent, I found are putting slightly bigger salaries out there to get that talent in. I may be wrong. And obviously, I found in the US that salaries and things are obviously a little bit different and a bit higher than they are over in Europe. I mean, what's your experience being in that, Fino?
I think it's challenging. I think that I think that companies have been trying to squeeze on salary, but then they're finding they're getting the right talent that they need, and so they're having to
Exactly, yeah.
readjust. And now with COVID, it makes it even harder because, well, how do you know? I, I think one of the adjustments is seeing employees as adults and not as kids, right? I mean, the problem is a lot of companies still have this very parental view of, I've got to keep an eye on my employee, otherwise won't be working. Whereas, this is the era of COVID, we're going to have to be a little bit more trusting of employees, and because we can't be on their backs anymore because we have to work remotely. So I think there's a bit of adjustment there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another question from Hokan, future employment and well, between so what do you guys are seeing in Haig&Co between systems integrators and software editors? Where do you think between the two the job growth will be?
Probably more on software editors, if I was to make a prediction just now, purely just because I think businesses are still going through a level of uncertainty, and so integrating new platforms or integrating new solutions into their platforms is possibly going to be maybe a second thought for them. And developing the systems they've already got is probably what they're gonna head towards. If I hope that's sort of answered the question that was posed there.
Well, I think he's just asking whether if you were looking for a job, is it more likely that the Accentures, the Capgeminis, uh, those kind of consulting and SI groups are going to be hiring, or is it more PTC and Dassault? In other words, where is the work going back to the software vendor in terms of the project work, or is it getting pushed even more towards Cap, or is it a question of client size? Dassault and the other big ones keeping very close to chest their big accountants, and then all the smaller ones just kind of jettisoning them to the SIs. I mean, what are
Yeah, I
you
think
seeing there? That's kind
I
of
think I think that's yeah. I mean, definitely, I think they're keeping some of their bigger clients closer to their chest, but a lot of the consultancy companies I found were working on them on projects that were put on hold and potentially working in those industries that are a little bit more risky to work within during this sort of COVID pandemic. So when things do start to move in the right direction, which I think they are at the moment, I think consultancy companies will begin to hire just as much as the big vendors are. Probably going to be more towards the beginning of next year when those kind of projects start to resume. So I think you'll start seeing more activity from consultancies then. But the bigger vendors at the moment are still the guys that are doing lots of work.
Well, at the same time, I think that the big ones also do a lot of subcontracting, even if the guy on site says he's from company X, oftentimes he's actually a subcontractor to that company. Um, so I think
Definitely.
your mileage will vary in terms of salary. I mean, if you were a developer at the software company, you're going to make a lot more money than if you're just in services, right? So it depends, and I think the one positive is that you're not going to have 50 to 70% travel anymore. If you
True.
hated doing that and never sleeping at home, I think those days are maybe behind us for the moment anyway.
Yeah, most definitely. Have you got any more questions come through at all?
I'm not seeing anything. But then we're getting, yeah. Well, it was anybody else? Thanks, Hokan, for that question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
anonymous attendee, whoever that was.
This is a disembodied voice from the curtains. This is Damien, part of Haig&Co here. One thing that I certainly notice is that from a selection process point of view, there is a tendency for the employers to have this perception that the market is flooded with amazing talent, and they can they can cherry pick the best talent but still deploy a pretty poor selection process. So I don't know in the chat if anyone has experienced that or have been part of a selection process where it has been particularly poor because of COVID impact as well. But I think that's endemic to a lot of the hiring processes that we see across different disciplines as well.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty horrific recruiting in recent times, I can say. I just, people don't even bother to read your CV. They just, they show up to the interview and they have their list of questions, but they don't, they're only listening for whatever they want to hear. I don't know. My faith in recruiters, particularly corporate recruiters at the moment, is not very high. I think I think you just pointed out, Damien, they've gotten a bit spoiled in terms of talent, and so I think they've gotten a bit lazy on how they do talent searching and talent qualification.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of the talent acquisition teams that we deal with, UK, Europe wide, they'll either have been on furlough or they'll have been made redundant. So, the people who are on the ground are sort of sitting there and either working directly to fill those projects, those hires, but the volume of roles certainly isn't there at the moment. One of the main vendors that we've been talking to, the Simon referred to earlier, they have a huge fear that they have cut too close to the bone and will be massively under resourced when the market starts to turn. And they're seeing that turning now, and the fear is that it's going to turn too quick and they will lose their edge. So it's a huge piece to consider.
So how can Momentum PLM play into this? Because we mentioned it briefly, but I'm just wondering if you can mention to everybody what, because you can look on the web pages. There's a lot of posts from George and company about it, but can you just speak to how that's can help people in their job search?
Yeah, sure. Sure. So Momentum PLM is a recently launched a digital platform to create a community within the PLM marketplace. And by community, there eventually will be forums, webinars, etc. Pushed out. And currently, we're developing, or the team at PLM are developing a news platform that will upskill, inform on a weekly basis. Part of the Momentum offering as well is to create a phenomenal and very engaged community within the global PLM marketplace. And then on the back of that as well, the team at Momentum will be engaging directly with vendors, consulting companies, SIs, etc., and end users in terms of supporting them in their talent search by advertising directly on the Momentum site, and therefore engaging within that community as well. So I'd certainly urge you to look at the Momentum site, and we can get that posted out on the links as well afterwards as well.
Yeah, definitely, we'll get that out to everyone. Fantastic.
Okay.
I think that's everything. I think there's any more questions or anything. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. Really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you in the future when we get some more webinars organised for you lot.
Yep, and thanks again, and check out the book on Amazon, check out the podcast and everything, and we'll be back to you soon. So the Two Cloud Crowd says thank you once again.
Cheers, guys. Thank you
Cheers.
very much. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.